What's up world? This week I got my hands on a Galaxy S22 Ultra and I just want to see if the portrait mode stacks up and is as good as Samsung says it is, so let's find out. As we can see with the first images I've just taken, Samsung's claims of having better AI to cut out hair and things seems to be pretty real. Obviously I took more sample images than what I'm showing on screen here, but overall the cutouts were pretty clean actually. Not as perfect as an interchangeable lens camera, but all you need to know for now is it's getting better. Right off the bat, we've got our standard 1x portrait zoom shot. Overall, both phones kill it here, but the iPhone did a better job of preserving the highlights in the back, and it didn't overly blur out the sign that I'm standing right beside. That being said, the yellow jacket I'm wearing in the Samsung picture is way more true to life. Even cropping both of these in and upping the bokeh from low to medium in post actually makes for decent portrait mode shots as well. The punch-in also shows off how the S22 Ultra is sharper, but grainier in a lot of cases. I actually prefer this crop plus edit method over the basic 3x portrait lens in low light on the Samsung. Here my coat is sharper and looks nice, but my face is a little smooth compared to the crop one we saw before. On the iPhone, I found things a little more consistent, but it's been a little too smooth throughout this whole example, so I guess that's not really saying a lot. Moving on to a daytime selfie shot, both phones do an excellent job here as well. The Samsung does get a bit tripped up by the wire above my head though, still, I'd call that a fluke. What's not a fluke though is how it blurred out the logo on my hat in this picture and quite a few others. I'm not sure what exactly it thought that little brown square was, but it was pretty annoying. I've also mentioned that in this lighting, the iPhone nailed the color of my coat more than the S22 Ultra, which was a bit too green this time. Alright, this selfie is at night, but the lighting outside the store was fairly bright. The real test was to see if any phone could catch and cut out my hair when the wind was blowing it around. Neither phone did a great job here. Samsung's was a little sharper, but the iPhone looks like it has a slightly more realistic focus fall off with its less intense face cutout. Here's a JPEG of the same scene with no blur applied. Let's see if Photoshop has any better luck blurring out the photo and keeping my hair intact. Nope, it doesn't. Maybe the hair on the iPhone pic is a little cleaner here, but it's not a huge improvement over Apple or Samsung's default processing in this instance, and not good enough to make me want to come into Photoshop to do this to more photos. This next shot is of my friend when he's walking. Both phones get a clean picture, but the Samsung definitely cut out his hair more effectively. Plus, on top of that, there's way more detail in his hat and jacket. Since you can see the ground in this photo, it's also a good judge of focus fall off like I've been talking about. Both phones do it really decent and have slightly realistic implementation here. This is another low light 3x zoom portrait shot, but this time the lighting is better and both photos maintained a lot more sharpness. Samsung is way sharper as always and has much better contrast here. It's hard to deny though that Apple's fake bokeh balls in the background don't steal the show with their bright color processing. Which is a bit weird though because on Alex's face, she's sort of faded out and the mask is actually a little more punchy on the Samsung side. Anyways, let's zoom in and once again we're gonna reveal nice sharp hair cutouts by Samsung for the most part. But it actually did lose a whole chunk of Alex's hair over her shoulder here. It's barely noticeable, but worth pointing out. Here's an actual good 3x portrait shot of Alex in better light. Both phones here are basically neck and neck. Samsung, of course, a tad sharper, but you do need to be watching it on the big screen to really notice that. But plus, both phones missed her hair blowing in the wind, so, that's definitely not a win. This is actually a good excuse though to show how composition can make a better portrait than portrait mode. Since we have so much depth in the background here, we can simply use the main camera and the raw file mode to capture a cleaner image of Alex. And if we use the zoom lens, we can force some real blur behind her. This results in perfectly cut out hair every time, and the photos look fairly similar. Just for fun, since we're working with these respective RAW files, let's punch in. Here you can see how much Samsung's higher megapixel count really is keeping the S22 Ultra's image crispy. It's a little noisy at this crop, but I don't really mind because it kind of reminds me of film grain. Here's another shot where I try to play around with perspective instead of portrait mode to test the limits of the S22 Ultra's new sensor, or old sensor, I guess. Anyway, both these images are exactly the same, but one is a RAW and one is a JPEG. As you can see, the JPEG is sharper, but the RAW has a little bit more of a realistic focus fall off along the wall. It isn't perfect, but it does add some more subtle isolation to the subject. However, with these types of photos, you really need to be forcing it with a background that's really far away or fading away quite strongly like these examples. Okay, this other shot isn't a great example to compare camera to camera, however it does show how good Samsung can be with hair cutouts when it actually hits perfectly. I mean, sure, my hair's a little messy here, but that is some golden hair. Even punching in along the side of my face, Samsung has pretty much cut me out perfectly. Sure, the iPhone grabbed focus on my eye better, so the shot's a little crispier, but I mean, look at the precision Samsung has now. It really is too bad that it does not hit this hard all of the time. At least not yet. Finally, for the last shot, let's do something more controlled at Alex's desk. Both phones did a decent job of blurring out the various stages of the foreground, but Samsung's slightly wider angle for its main camera may have helped a bit more here, just composition-wise. Still, the iPhone does have, I think, more realistic focus fall-off down in the corner. When you crop in, Samsung once again did a slightly better job of cutting out the hair, but like all the other photos, it's not exactly perfect here. Samsung, Apple, and even Adobe are all getting better at making fake blurry backgrounds, but they're not always perfect. With a bit of time, I think you can get great images out of the S22 Ultra, the iPhone, or pretty much everything, but it's really about how you stage the photo, I think, for the most part. Sure, the S22 Ultra's extra megapixels do count, but to be honest, if you're just looking at it on a phone, I don't think it matters as much. Samsung is on the right track with its new hair cutout software. If it can bring a slightly better sensor to its 3x zoom lens and better AI to help determine how much blur is applied to each photo so I don't need to actually go in and adjust each picture in post, it might be unbeatable next year. And that's not all. This year, Samsung is also touting new and improved portrait video mode, something maybe to keep up with cinematic mode on the iPhone. So let's put it to the test. Both phones can handle a simple walk and talk shot like this. I would say it's kind of like portrait mode photos though. You do need to turn the blur down in post or before you're shooting because it is all a bit synthetic, but overall, pretty good for simple shots. Samsung does lose some points though because it only works at detecting faces. As with the iPhone, you can kind of use cinematic mode on anything, and especially in post, you can apply focus points, so I can move here and it would focus on the hill. It might even do that automatically, and the Samsung is a lot less control. So Samsung does win some points back in kind of the gimmicky department, I guess. You know, if you like a glitch camera or this weird circle blur, Alex is filtering through them all now. Samsung does have that as opposed to just the regular blur that the iPhone has. But these are all things that can be found in third-party apps, so I wouldn't put too much stake in them. All right, so if you want to learn more about the S22 Ultra, you can see a review up here. If you want to learn more about the iPhone 13, we got reviews down here somewhere. Subscribe button over here, and I'm Brad Bennett, and thanks for watching. See you guys next time.